Football calls itself the beautiful game, and most of the time it earns that name. The passion, the drama, the moments that stop a nation's heartbeat.
And footballers impacted by life-threatening heart conditions.
But behind those shining stadiums and billion-dollar television deals, there is a darker story. One that the sport has told badly or not told at all.
Well, he was unexpectedly and tragically killed in a plane crash as he was travelling by plane.
This is the story of the players football let die in silence. Players who deserved outcry and got whispers. Players who deserved justice and got forgotten. Let's get into it. Andrés Escobar. Andrés Escobar Saldarriaga was a Colombian professional footballer who played as a centre-back for Atlético Nacional and the Colombia national team. They called him El Caballero del Fútbol, the gentleman of football. He was known for his clean style of play and his calmness on the pitch. A man that elegant, in a country that dangerous, was already playing a game with impossible odds. Heading into the 1994 World Cup in the United States, Colombia had assembled a brilliant squad and were riding a wave of momentum into the tournament. They had signed off their qualifying campaign with a stunning 5-0 thrashing of Argentina in Buenos Aires. Brazilian legend Pelé had even tipped Colombia to go all the way and win the tournament. Everything was set. Colombia was going to show the world. Then came the match against the United States. In the 35th minute, stretching to block a cross from American midfielder John Harkes, Escobar inadvertently deflected the ball into his own net. The United States went on to win 2-1. Colombia was eliminated, and back home in Medellin, something far worse than disappointment was brewing. Here is where things get very, very dark. Medellin was controlled by drug traffickers, with a murder rate of 380 per 100,000 inhabitants. Football was not just sport there, it was money, cartel money. It is reported that the Gallon brothers, known figures in the Medellin crime scene, had lost a considerable amount of money betting on the outcome of the match against the United States. On the evening of July 3rd, 1994, 5 days after the elimination of Colombia from the World Cup, Escobar went out with friends to a bar in the El Poblado neighborhood in Medellin. Then they went to a liquor store. Shortly afterwards, they arrived at the El Indio nightclub. His friends split up. At approximately 3 a.m. the next morning, Escobar was alone in the parking lot of El Indio, in his car, when 3 men appeared. They began arguing with him. 2 of the men took out handguns. Escobar was shot 6 times with a .38 caliber pistol, and the most chilling detail. According to eyewitnesses, the gunman shouted "Goal" before firing each shot. Once for each time a football commentator had screamed it on the broadcast. 6 bullets, 6 goals, 1 life. Escobar was taken to the hospital where he died 45 minutes later. He was 27 years old. His girlfriend later said, "He was going to be my husband, the father of my children, but it didn't happen." Escobar's funeral was attended by more than 120,000 people. Colombia mourned. The world was briefly horrified. Colombian coach Francisco Maturana said, "Soccer is only a game, and there's no justification for Andrés to have been killed for having committed an own goal." But football's governing bodies? They moved on. The World Cup continued. The next match kicked off, and the system that had let narco money flood Colombian football for decades quietly looked the other way. The gunman, Humberto Castro Muñoz, a driver and bodyguard for the Gallon brothers, confessed and was sentenced to 43 years in prison, but was released after 11 years. His bosses, the Gallon brothers, were never charged. Despite being arrested, they were soon released for alleged lack of evidence, at a time when drug cartels' influence and threat to the Colombian judiciary were at their peak. The gentleman of football, shot to death for a mistake, and the sport that failed to protect him just kept playing. Justin Fashanu. Justin Fashanu played for a variety of clubs between 1978 and 1997. He was strong, he was bold, he was talented beyond debate. He was one of the first footballers to command a £1 million transfer fee, with his move from Norwich City to Nottingham Forest in 1981.
Justin Fashanu was the first black player to command a £1 million transfer fee.
The first black footballer in Britain to cost that much. A landmark, a moment of history. In 1980, he won the BBC Goal of the Season award for a spectacular goal against Liverpool.
Ryan, Fashanu. What a goal!
People who watched it say it was breathtaking. A left-footed volley so perfectly struck, it barely seemed real. The crowd roared. He raised one finger to the sky. It looked like the beginning of something incredible. It was actually the beginning of the end. He came out publicly later in his career, becoming the first professional footballer to be openly gay. October 22nd, 1990, The Sun newspaper. Headline, £1 million soccer star, I am gay. He said he wanted to stop living a lie. The response from football was savage. His manager at Nottingham Forest, Brian Clough, called him a bloody poof. Although Fashanu laughed this off, Clough's sneers hurt inside, making it hard for him to concentrate on scoring goals. In his autobiography, Clough recalled confronting Fashanu in the dressing room by asking, "Where do you go if you want a loaf of bread? A baker's? Where do you go if you want a leg of lamb? A butcher's? So why do you keep going to that bloody poofs club?" The cruelty, in front of the whole squad, from the manager. A week after he came out, his brother, fellow footballer John Fashanu, disowned Justin in the black newspaper, The Voice. "John Fashanu, my gay brother is an outcast," screamed the headline. John later admitted to offering Justin $75,000 to stay quiet and keep his sexuality secret. He told the Daily Mirror, "I begged him. I threatened him. I did everything I could possibly do to try and stop him coming out. I gave him the money because I didn't want the embarrassment for me or my family." Fashanu's coming out was also denounced by The Voice as an affront to the black community, damaging, pathetic, and unforgivable. He was abandoned by his sport, by his family, by nearly everyone who should have stood beside him. After moving to the United States, in 1998 he was questioned by police when a 17-year-old boy accused him of sexual assault. He was charged, and a warrant for his arrest was issued in Howard County, Maryland, on April 3, 1998, but he had already left his flat. According to his note, fearing he would not get a fair trial because of his homosexuality, he fled to England. He was found hanged in a disused lock-up garage in Shoreditch, East London, about a mile away from where he had been born in Hackney, 37 years prior. His note denied the charges and claimed the was consensual. His final words, "I hope the Jesus I love welcomes me home." Despite the deluge of abuse, Fashanu had remained defiant and told The Voice, "Those who say that you can't be black, gay, and proud of it are ignorant." But football never listened, and football never protected him. Decades after he came out, he remains the only top-flight male professional to have done so publicly. That tells you everything about what his death changed. Almost nothing. Marc-Vivien Foé. Marc-Vivien Foé was a Cameroonian professional footballer who played as a defensive midfielder. Having initially played for Canon Yaoundé, Foé went on to play professionally in League One and the Premier League with Lens, West Ham United, Lyon, and Manchester City. By the summer of 2003, he was at the peak of his career. Strong, reliable, the kind of midfielder defenders feared and managers adored. Players likened him to Patrick Vieira, the incomparable Frenchman who helped France win the 1998 World Cup. That was the reputation he was building for himself as the next Vieira, said former Canadian captain Jason DeVos. He was very much in that same mold, big, strong and dominant, and yet still technically gifted. He wasn't just a destroyer, he was a very talented player overall.
And footballers impacted by life-threatening heart conditions.
On June 26, 2003, Cameroon faced Colombia in the Confederations Cup semi-final, held at the Stade de Gerland in Lyon, France. In the 72nd minute of the match, Foé collapsed in the center circle with no other players near him. Nobody had touched him. No clash, no tackle. He was jogging. Then he was on the ground. After attempts to resuscitate him on the pitch, he was stretchered off the field, where he received mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and oxygen. Medics spent 45 minutes attempting to restart his heart, and although he was still alive upon arrival at the stadium's medical center, he died shortly afterwards. Legend Roger Miller was in the stands. He recalled seeing Foé fall and waiting, and eventually being taken to the dressing room. "The doctor immediately told me that Foé was dead, that they had not been able to resuscitate him," Miller said. "It was a terrible shock, but I had to go and see him, and almost 20 years later, it's still very difficult to talk about it." Foé was inside, alone. He was lying down, his body covered with a sheet. A second autopsy concluded that Foé's death was heart-related, as it discovered evidence of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a hereditary condition known to increase the risk of sudden death during physical exercise, a condition nobody had caught, nobody had detected, even after routine checkups. Foe left behind a wife and sons aged 6 and 3, as well as a daughter of only 2 months old. The player's generosity had been legendary, and there were reports that he had not much money left behind. Foe was buried on the site of the football academy he had been having built in his hometown of Yaoundé. He used to send a proportion of his wages home to his father each month to fund the construction, but now, sadly, it has practically been abandoned because of a lack of funding. And here is the part that stings. That the Confederations Cup continued at all was controversial enough, but FIFA president Sepp Blatter was accused of exploiting Foe's death to ratchet up global media interest in the Cameroon-France final. Blatter's enthusiastic endorsement of the suggestion to rename the Confederations Cup after Foe's smacks of a brazen attempt to curry favour for the competition, wrote the Sunday Herald. Prior to the 2006 World Cup in Germany, all players were forced to go through mandatory heart testing before they were allowed to compete in the tournament. That was the one lasting change, one rule, for a man who was everything. Diego Mendieta. Now here is the story that will make your blood run cold. Diego Mendieta was a Paraguayan footballer who went to Indonesia to chase his dream. He played for Persis Solo, a club based 90 minutes flight from Jakarta. He celebrated goals on the pitch with his teammates. He called home to his wife and 2 children. And then, slowly, everything fell apart. His club stopped paying him. 4 months went by. The wages, worth an estimated $12,500, simply never came. Mendieta was trapped. He wanted desperately to return home to Paraguay, but as Indonesian journalist Sam Hadi of Compass Daily reported, after his contract expired in June and his former club had not paid his salary, Mendieta suffered financially. He played in some rough football matches to survive in Solo. He was unable to pay for his rented room in the last 6 months. He even had difficulties paying for food, so his friends, colleagues and fans raised money to help him. His agent prepared a flight ticket, but Mendieta reportedly refused to go home empty-handed. He was ashamed to return to his family without the money he had earned. His wife Valeria later said, "He was practically abandoned. The only help he received was from 3 Paraguayan companions, nothing other than that." He fell ill in early November, first diagnosed with typhoid. Then the cytomegalovirus crawled to his brain. He changed hospitals 3 times because he could not afford the medical bills. He lost 17 kilograms, nearly 37 pounds, in weight. His skeletal frame was left on a stretcher, covered by an old Real Madrid shirt, with a few football fans for company. On December 4th, 2012, Diego Mendieta died in a hospital in Solo, Indonesia. He was 32 years old. He always complained of being lonely, said Guntur Hernawan, head of the internal medicine division at Mowadi Hospital. He said he wanted to go home because all of his relatives were in Paraguay. And where was the sport while this happened? Nowhere. At the same time that Fabrice Muamba's dramatic cardiac arrest at White Hart Lane had been broadcast live around the globe, generating global headlines and an autobiography, Diego Mendieta died without a single news story, not even a hashtag. FIFPro's Secretary General Frederic Winier said, "I know countless stories of players who are intentionally not paid by their club and have to wait for months for their salary, but I have never before heard a story where a seriously ill player has been left completely to his fate by a club. I assume that both the club and the National Football Association of Indonesia realize that they have seriously failed and that they have much to explain, particularly to the family and relatives of Diego Mendieta." The fans of Persis Solo, passionate as they were, raised about $300 in his final days. $300. For a professional footballer who had given everything to the game. It was too late. Pier Mario Morosini. Morosini was orphaned in his teens. His mother died when he was just 15, followed by his father 2 years later. His brother died shortly afterward too, leaving the young Morosini with just an older sister. Most people with that kind of grief stop running. Morosini ran harder. He was not a superstar, and neither was he a household name plying his trade in the top tier of the Italian footballing pyramid. But he was a lively figure, always walking onto the field with a gentleman's smile on his face. He had come through the Atalanta youth system, represented Italy at under-21 level, and was on loan at Livorno in Serie B when April 14th, 2012 arrived. That date, that match, Pescara versus Livorno. While representing Livorno, Morosini suffered cardiac arrest and fell to the ground in the 31st minute of the Serie B match. He stumbled on the ground, trying to get up, before losing consciousness and receiving medical attention on the field. A car had been left unattended, blocking the entrance to the pitch for the ambulance. Morosini's path to the nearby Santo Spirito Hospital was thus delayed. Although a fan in the crowd who happened to be a doctor rushed to provide immediate medical care, it was not enough. The doctor later said, "Morosini never had a single heartbeat again. From when I arrived, he never gave a sign of revival, not in his respiration, nor his heartbeat." Experts stated that when the emergency doctor arrived to treat Morosini, his survival chances were around 70% if a defibrillator had been used promptly. This failure led to a 2016 manslaughter conviction for 3 doctors, along with a joint compensation order of €150,000 involving the doctors, Pescara's health authority, and the football club. 70%. He had a 70% chance, and a parked, unattended car and the failure to use a defibrillator correctly took that chance away.
Livorno midfielder Pier Mario Morosini suffering cardiac arrest and collapsing during a Serie B match.
Morosini had once said in a 2005 interview, "These are things that mark you and change your life, but at the same time they put a lot of anger into your body and help you to always give everything to realize what was also a dream of my parents. I would like to become a good player, especially for them, because I know how happy it would make them." Morosini's sister, who is disabled, was left with no family. However, Udinese player Antonio Di Natale confirmed that he would financially support and look after her. A beautiful gesture from a teammate, not from the sport, not from the system. Antonio José Puerta Perez was a Spanish professional footballer who played solely for Sevilla, mainly a left midfielder who could also operate as an attacking left-back. He died on August 28, 2007, affected with arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, 3 days after suffering a series of cardiac arrests during a La Liga game against Getafe on the 25th. He was 22 years old. His girlfriend was 7 months pregnant. Born in Seville, Puerta joined Sevilla as a boy and spent a total of 14 years at the club, growing up in its acclaimed youth system alongside other players such as Sergio Ramos and Jesus Navas. He was Sevilla through and through. His left foot was so lethal they called it the diamond left foot. In the club's 100th year, in the dying moments of a UEFA Cup semi-final against Schalke 04, Puerta came on as a substitute and scored a spectacular left-footed goal that gave Sevilla a 1-0 win on the night and sent them through to the final.
It's Sevilla against Middlesbrough in the UEFA Cup final,
where they went on to demolish Middlesbrough 4-0. That goal launched Sevilla's golden age. Puerta was the spark that lit the fire. Puerta collapsed after jogging back towards his own goal 35 minutes into a home game against Getafe. Teammates and medical staff immediately rushed to his side and were seen preventing him from swallowing his tongue as he lost consciousness, but he was able to walk from the pitch. Doctors said that he collapsed again in the changing rooms and had to be given cardiac resuscitation before being taken to hospital. 3 days later, he was gone. The hospital confirmed the death was caused by post-anoxic encephalopathy and a multiple failure of his organs caused by the prolonged cardiac arrest. Real Madrid captain Raúl paid tribute, saying, "He was a young man that had made his international debut and had a huge influence on those around him. We have lost a teammate and a great professional footballer." When news emerged of the 22-year-old's passing, the entire country was in mourning. People from all across Spain travelled to Sevilla for the funeral. Puerta's coffin was laid in the stadium, while thousands upon thousands waited hours in line to pay their respects, even if only for a mere 5 seconds. The Andalusian club still hold a round of applause in the 16th minute of every game in honour of their former number 16. His son Aitor was born 2 months after his death and was immediately made an official Sevilla club member. Sergio Ramos wore a shirt after scoring a goal that read, "Rest in peace, Puerta. I will never forget you." But here is the brutal truth. Puerta's heart condition was arrhythmogenic cardiomyopathy, diagnosable, in theory, detectable, and yet no pre-match screening had found it. No club medical system had raised the alarm. He passed every check. He had played every game. He had been cleared as fit over and over, while a fatal defect quietly hid inside his chest. How many others are playing right now with the same invisible ticking inside them? Football still does not have a universal mandatory cardiac screening protocol in place at every level of the game. The beautiful game keeps asking that question, and the answer keeps coming too late. Foe was the first footballer to die in an international match since Samuel Okwareji collapsed during a World Cup qualifier against Angola in 1989. And yet, decades later, we are still having the same conversations about player safety, unpaid wages, systemic failures, and a sport that too often protects its image before it protects its people. These stories needed to be told. Which of these deaths hit you the hardest? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Goal Rivals so you don't miss the next ones.